Well, hello, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I am Professor Ellerts. I am a visiting associate professor and environmental and energy law fellow here at GW. Today, we are talking with the former student body president of the SALDF, which we'll explain what that is in a second, and the new SALDF president, and we'll explain what this student organization is, what it is they do, and hopefully you find this informative. I will let Michael introduce himself first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Swistera. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a recent, as of a week or two ago, graduate of the George Washington University Law School. Up until recently, so for the last year, I was president of the Student Animal Legal Defense Fund, or SALDF chapter here. I was also an Emerging Scholars Fellow this past year at the Brooks Institute for Animal Rights Law and Policy, and starting in September, after I take the bar exam, I will be a litigation fellow at the Animal Legal Defense Fund, ALDF.
And I am Laura Mezzanotti. I am a rising 2L. I am the incoming president for SALDF. I have worked in a lot of different animal care organizations before coming to law school, and I got really involved in SALDF this past year. Michael's like my mentor, and now I am currently a legal extern for in-house counsel at the ASPCA. So yeah.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you both to make time during your busy summer schedules to be on this Zoom call. So thank you. Let's start with a very basic question. So what is the Student Animal Legal Defense Fund, and what is it that you all do? This goes to either one of you.
Well, I mean, at a high level, we're a student-led organization that's dedicated to protecting the lives and furthering the interests of non-human animals using the law. And so in practice, what that means is we can provide space or create a forum for educational panels and activities, community building, networking events, advocacy and scholarship within the law school for the interests of animals across all fields of animal law, whether that's wildlife, endangered species, farmed animals, domesticated or companion animals, animals used in research, anything related to kind of animal law from trusts and estates to environmental law, we're happy to interact with.
I also want to add that it's a great place to meet people who are interested in what you're interested in, if you're interested in animal law, because it's kind of a niche area. Sometimes it's hard to find people that want to talk about it in the way you want to talk about it. So that was definitely what it was for me this year. Is like a great space to meet people that felt the same way that I felt about things, or wanted to go on the same career path, even just generally that I wanted to go on.
So some people out there may have heard of the Animal Legal Defense Fund itself. How does that relate to your student organization, the student chapter here at GW?
I can take that one. I mean, so we're a student chapter of ALDF. ALDF has a student relations, a sort of department or person who works with the various chapters of law schools across the country, but it's mostly through sort of support. Everything that we do in terms of programming is run by students here at GW. But ALDF provides us with flyers and written material. If we want to do tabling to get students interested and informed about different areas of animal law, they can provide us with physical materials. They can also provide support if we're struggling to figure out events or need to make connections with people for a documentary screening or speaker. We haven't done that this past year, but ALDF kind of holds himself out as helping student orgs in that way. And then they also offer financial support for students as well. So through SALDF, ALDF can pay for example, student fees to be able to go to the annual animal law conference, which LDF co-hosts each year. So they'll usually provide funding to SALDF chapters for students to be able to go to that virtually or in person, depending on what year and where it is and things like that. LDF also offers scholarships that are usually independent of SALDF. For example, last summer, I got a scholarship through LDF to take a course virtually at Lewis and Clark over the summer, but that was independent of my SALDF membership. That was just another way that they support students interested in animal law.
So now flipping to the university side of things, what professors, adjuncts, people at GW do you work with the most closely?
Do you want me to take that one? Well, the head of the faculty supervisor for our organization is Professor John Schaffner. He is like one of the great experts. I was just on the phone with someone today at the SPCA, and they're like, "Oh my God, you know John Schaffner?" So very lucky to have Schaffner as our supervisor for the club. We also work with different people within the SBA because we are a student organization, so there's lots of interaction there. And also this year, Miss Bobby, who works in the first floor of the law school, huge help this year with organizing different things. So those are just a few of the people that we're in touch with.
The only other people I would add to that, and I would echo how lucky we are to have Professor Schaffner here at GW, Professor Evelyn Gambert, who I believe is the interim director of our legal writing program, does a lot of animal law work on the side and teaches a seminar course called Gender, Race, and Species. So we work with Professor Gambert as well on certain events. And then sometimes we work with environmental law faculty like yourself, Professor Ellerts, or Professor Glicksman on more environmental animal issues like wildlife and endangered species issues. And then there are adjuncts that we interact with, like Howard Crystal and Ingrid Segerman and formerly Nancy Perry, who teach the animal law seminar course that we have at GW as well.
Wonderful. So let's dive a little deeper. What are some of the events, programs that SALDF puts on, whether that was this year, last year, a couple years ago, and looking towards the future, things you have planned and upcoming?
Yeah, so this past year, every year we do the vegan breakfast that we basically supply like a vegan breakfast so people can understand more about what it is to be vegan and what the food looks like for people who are vegan. So we do that every year. And then we also do a fundraiser every year, which is usually the pet calendar, the pet photo calendar. Actually, Michael, if you want to keep talking, I can pull out my pet photo calendar. Oh my God, you already have it. Okay, perfect. So yeah, so we have the pet photo calendar, which we do every year, and that raises a lot of the funds for our organization throughout the year. We also, Michael was so great this year in organizing like a host of educational panels, like different people coming in from different organizations, talking about their work, sometimes just talking about a specific area of law. Like we had the ag-gag law panel earlier in the fall, which is just talking about ag-gag laws as they're coming into more prominence lately, and sort of the different experts talking about that. And then we also did, Michael organized a lot of these, so it's kind of funny that I'm talking about them, but he also organized the like 1L, how to get an internship in animal law conversation as well. There was a panel for that too. So it's a lot of like educational things as well as like some fun things. So. Oh, and sorry, wait, one more thing. For upcoming, we're hoping to basically do all that again, but something we want to add, which we've been talking about, is a like a larger reception. Some organizations did like some more like formal meet and greets. Now that we're in person, I think it's a little bit easier to do, and things are cooling down. So hopefully next year we can do like a larger sort of social event.
I'm really excited to hear that, Laura. I know in the past, SALDF has done a few more social events, but it's obviously been hard these last few years. One event that I know that we did a few years ago that my predecessor organized when she was president was an endangered species trivia night, which a bunch of people showed up for and was really fun. So something like that's a good idea going forward as well. As Laura said, this year we had a whole bunch of educational sort of panels, which was really fun. We did a documentary screening near the end of the year as well. That was sort of tied in with our general body meeting where we showed a documentary on the dairy industry in New Zealand, which was really interesting. And I have a copy of the calendar, pet photo calendar up here in case anyone didn't see it, that we make one of those every year as well. And that was a great fundraiser this year.
I will just say you all put on some exceptional events this past year that I tried to attend as many as I could. I found them very educational, very helpful. Specifically the ag-gag event was great. I have my pet calendar as well up in my office. So definitely be on the lookout for that. That is a fun, great event as well. So for incoming 1Ls or current 1Ls, how can they get involved?
I'm sorry, I do want to answer your question and maybe I'll have Laura answer, but a quick plug for, we have a YouTube channel for the GW SALDF chapter, and a few of the events that we hosted this past year on there, including the ag-gag sort of litigation updates panel, the internship and career panel. We did a panel on racial justice and animal law that's also up on our YouTube channel. So everyone should go check that out. It's just GW SALDF on YouTube. Some of our events weren't able to be up there. Like we did one on undercover investigations, which pretty obviously the person didn't want us to be recording and sharing, but that was really, really interesting to attend as well. Sorry, Laura, I will let you take over sort of how 1Ls can get involved. You have the most immediate 1L experience.
Yeah, so for 1Ls, so every year there's the club fair at the beginning of the year where people can get on the list for our newsletter. So then we'll put out a newsletter. Basically, we do it every week of just things that are happening, events that we're putting on, events that we're not putting on, but we might go to that are like put on by other organizations, as well as like job opportunities and things like that. So just getting on the email newsletter chain is a huge plug into what we're doing, because it's basically that. And then we have only like a couple of meetings throughout the year. So that's kind of the best way to get involved and then come to the events that we organize and meet people that way. So hopefully the more in-person things that we do, the easier it will be to like get everyone to meet. But that's probably the best way to start out as a 1L and then go from there.
I would echo that. Go ahead.
I also wanted to add, I forgot to mention that we also have some e-board positions that will be open in the fall. I think we'll have secretary and treasurer available for 1Ls who want to join in that way. That's how I got involved, is basically first meeting, we had an election and I volunteered to be secretary. So
yes, I would echo that being on the listserv is a great, very easy way to get involved and dip your toe into the animal law field, what SALDF does, the events going on, just being aware, and then when you have time, start attending some of the ones that seem most interesting to you. So most students, maybe 1Ls, 2Ls, are always probably thinking about jobs and careers. So what does SALDF do to try to help students find careers, internships, explore this field of animal law?
That's a great question. And it's definitely, as Laura said, a bit of a niche field. So we try to do what we can to help sort of folks be able to get internships and get jobs in that field. I mean, it starts with the newsletter that Laura was just talking about. Laura's done an amazing job this past year of writing the newsletter every week and making sure that every internship and post-grad job is posted there every week. So you'll be, one of the first to hear about hopefully new internships as they become available with all the different animal law nonprofits or government entities or wherever those internships and jobs might arise. As we mentioned earlier, we did an internship and career panel last year where we had a couple of students and a couple of practicing lawyers speak about how they got their first internships and their first jobs in the field, whether that was right out of law school, later in their career, kind of how they got where they are now. And hopefully we'll continue to do events like that with other folks just to hear sort of all the different ways to get into animal law. And then over time, we've also built up, I think, a pretty good network through current and former members of SALDF, alumni of the GW SALDF group, as well as faculty members like Professor Schaffner, who just have connections at virtually every animal law organization. So if folks want to get put in touch with someone at, say, Farm Sanctuary or HSUS, we usually know someone there that they can speak to. And hopefully that helps too, because animal law is, again, as we've said several times, kind of niche. It can be a little intimidating and it can feel sometimes like you have to be a little scrappy because there isn't that institutionalized sort of career center office set up for animal law like there might be for big law or even other areas of public interest work. But anything that we can do to help connect people to internships and to folks at these different organizations, we'll definitely do.
Yeah, I would also add, I think Schaffner would kick us if we didn't mention that the ABA has 2 committees that you can join, and it's a great way to make professional connections. So there's the TIPS, that's like the tort and insurance one that has an animal law committee underneath it, and then there's the International Animal Law Committee. And the way ABA has like changed their groups and their like organizational structure. So like you go on the website and it's a lot easier to understand. So you just sign up and you can get involved. And there's like monthly meetings where you meet people who are involved in it. And actually there'll be like people that I had informational interviews with that will be in those meetings. I'm like, oh my God, I know you. Like I'm starting to recognize names and I've only been involved in it for, a year. So I would say it's a really great way to meet people in that field as well.
So what advice would you have for any incoming SALDF presidents, future student leaders of this organization?
I can start and then I'll turn it over to Laura. That's a tough question. I think we're in a really exciting time for animal law, both generally, but especially at GW, that things are kind of changing and expanding. So as some people who are watching might know, GW and ALDF recently announced a partnership to create the Animal Legal Education Initiative here at GW Law, which hopefully starting next year is going to kind of redefine animal law within the legal field. And I'm really excited about all the opportunities that that's going to create and that sort of stuff that I can't even think about how that's going to interact with SALDF and what role students might have going forward in GW. It just really puts our school on the map as a sort of preeminent animal law institution, which is really exciting. But drawing back just a little bit, I think one piece of advice that I would give to Laura or any other future president is, cultivate the people who are interested in animal law. I feel very lucky with people like Laura, but also Kaylee and Ashini and other 1Ls who came to GW, if not explicitly wanting to pursue animal law, like very closely interested in that. And just, cultivate those people, be mentors to them, get them to be involved, whether it's on the board, whether it's helping run events. And you're going to get some awesome programming. You'll get folks going to cool internships, and that's kind of why we're all here. One thing that I wish I'd done better, which hopefully Laura can learn from, is kind of finding people just outside that circle who might be interested in animal law. I learned pretty late in academic year about 2 or 3 folks who were like pursuing scholarships and internships in animal law that I'd never interacted with. And I feel like I probably could have done more to go out of my way to, let everyone know that SALDF was a group and what we were doing, and maybe try and get more people involved. So that's, I think, one piece of advice that I would give.
Yeah, that's completely true, and very yes, I completely agree. I also think it is tough. I noticed things with like the pet photo calendar, how a lot of people were really interested in that, but weren't necessarily getting their information directly from the student organization. They were getting it through like the channels where we posted them, like through the SBA newsletter and things like that. So I think there is still like a need to like delve into the people that are definitely interested in it, but are just off the beaten path. And I think, I think that it's honestly just been difficult because of everybody not being able to do so many things in person. That's how you get a lot of events getting people more engaged like that. So hopefully next year and the years after, we can just get more people involved through just having more, in-person sort of fun events. So.
Speaking of fun events, if you had to pick your favorite event that SALDF put on, what would it be? I will go first. This is a difficult question, but I would go with the Ag-Gag event. It was very educational. We had a great turnout, some phenomenal speakers. So that was my personal favorite.
Okay, my favorite was definitely the undercover investigations conversation that we had with somebody from Mercy for Animals. That was so interesting. I was so curious about that area. I really didn't have any idea because it's so private by its nature that it's hard to get a good look at it. But luckily, Michael had a connection with the speaker, and it was like hugely, hugely fascinating. So that was definitely my favorite.
That is a really tough question. Both of those events that you highlighted were fantastic. I felt very lucky with the speakers we got for both of them. The Ag-Gag panel, we received a lot of positive feedback from folks who weren't even that interested in animal law, who had been found out about it through, for example, the environmental newsletter or the American Constitution Society, who we partner with for the Ag-Gag event. And they came at it from a First Amendment free speech perspective, for example. So I think that was a great example of an event where we partnered with other organizations at GW to get folks talking about these issues. And same with the undercover investigations. Our speaker was just so candid and honest about how he got into it and what it takes and the emotional toll of conducting investigations and how his organization supported him and how he kind of supports current investigators, which is just, again, even something that someone who'd worked at Mercy for Animals that I didn't know much about at all. So that was really fascinating. So to pick a different event, I think in the spring we did an educational panel on racial justice and animal law that Kaylee, who's the one that helped organize, that I thought was fantastic. And again, we just had like an all-star cast of speakers, of folks who have name recognition in the field, who just had, again, a very candid conversation about complex issues, about their own experiences in the field of animal advocacy that I feel very lucky that we got to sort of help host. And that was done in coordination with the Black Law Students Association. And we had a fantastic turnout for that too, like a law class from University of San Francisco Law School all joined over Zoom, which was really cool. And the limited in-person events we had, like the vegan breakfast, were really fun just because I got to talk to a lot of people in person, and all the food went pretty quickly, which was meant it was a hit.
So last question before I turn it over to you both to see if you have any last thoughts or questions for each other is, what got each of you into animal law to begin with, and why did you become a part of SALDF?
So I got interested in animals really young. I was raised by animal lovers. My grandparents are vegetarian, so that was always probably in my blood. But I actually went to a high school that has a zoo, so I worked there, and I was like, this is fascinating. But as time went on, I worked in a couple of other places, and I worked in another zoo, and I learned like the crucial difference between an AZA accreditation and a ZAA accreditation, which is complicated and so essential to codifying more of the animals. Like, sorry, my connection's unstable, so I hope you can still hear me, but codifying more of like animal welfare and animal rights issues. So that's how I kind of decided I think it's time for me to get more involved. And I got involved with SALDF basically because I wanted to go to law school to focus on animal stuff. So I picked a law school that had a student animal legal defense fund. And as soon as it was there, I was like, okay, well, I'm coming to the first meeting, and immediately got involved. But I definitely don't think that I would have stayed involved as I was if it weren't for Michael and his like amazing leadership in the organization and mentorship. Like, definitely something that I want to emulate when I become president in the following year. Just being like very accessible to people that are interested in it and helping people understand the different aspects of it, because even someone who had worked in animal welfare for a really long time, I didn't know a lot about animal law because it is so complicated and not necessarily like openly available to people. So definitely Michael was like a huge influence in me staying involved. So yeah.
That is very wonderful to hear. So thank you so much, Laura. My story is a little different, and I wish I'd come to law school sort of as definitive as Laura has. And it's really exciting to see more and more folks, I feel like, each year come to law school and knowing they want to do animal law, or at least coming to GW, which is really cool. My background is in economics, and I was working in a sort of sales operations finance role in New York after I finished school. And I had been vegan for a little while, and I was going to sort of like vegan potluck events and a part of a vegan running club in New York. But I hadn't transitioned careers yet. And then I decided I wanted to go to law school. That was the next best step for me. And at the time, I sort of didn't really know animal law was a thing. So I told everyone when I quit my job, I was going to do environmental law, which I still very much am interested in and have a lot of respect for. But when I got to law school, almost immediately, I met Meredith, who was then president of our SALDF chapter, at one of the first sort of 1L events. And this was 4 years ago because I did a joint degree. So I've been around for a little bit, and immediately got involved with SALDF as a 1L rep because they were like the other vegans on campus and the people interested in animals. And GW also has an animal welfare pro bono project that Professor Schaffner runs and that I was the sort of student liaison for this past year. So I got involved with that in my first year. And within my first semester of law school, as part of that project, I was helping draft legislative language that ended up being introduced for the DC Council later, which is just so exciting and so cool to get involved that way. And through Meredith and Professor Schaffner's mentorship, and then later through internships at HSUS and Mercy for Animals and Animal Outlook and all these different organizations I've been very lucky to work at, I realized that this was a possible career path, and kind of immediately the light flicked on that this is exactly what I want to do. And now that I sort of saw it was possible, I just got as involved as possible in the ABA, which Laura spoke about earlier. I was the student vice chair for the Animals and Agriculture subcommittee this past year, and through the Brooks Institute fellowship I did, and now SALDF here. I was a 1L rep my first year, and then I was kind of tangentially involved. SALDF, like other student orgs, kind of struggled with events throughout the year and a half that we were fully remote. And then when we came back, I thought it would be great to run for the e-board or for president of SALDF in my last year, in part just because it had been kind of a couple of years without anything happening in a lot of student orgs. And because I'd been here that extra year, I had a little bit of more institutional knowledge of what it was like when we had during my 1L year, sort of a full in-person year where we did fun events and stuff. So I wanted to carry over some of that institutional knowledge, as well as just bring some of the networking and some of the internship experience that I'd sort of obtained over the last few years to it as well, and hopefully be a resource and a mentor to students like Laura, which it's good to hear. It sounds like I have been for the most part. And this is what I want to do with my life and my career. I'll be starting this fall at the Animal Legal Defense Fund, which I'm really excited about.
Thank you both for sharing your stories, and thank you both for your leadership. SALDF was in great hands and is in great hands, so I'm looking forward to how the organization continues to grow and build upon some of its great foundation that's been laid. Any last thoughts, words from either of you? Any questions, things we haven't discussed yet that you want to add in before I let you both go?
I don't have any questions. I will say, even though I've graduated, I'm still happy to be a resource to anyone. So feel free to reach out to me over LinkedIn or Twitter, or just email me at michaelsfacera@gmail.com. I'm happy to answer questions or connect you with anyone I might know. But also, obviously, for GW students in particular, you can reach out to Laura, and there's the saldef@law.gwu.edu account as well that gets checked regularly.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. No questions, but I would encourage like anyone who's watching this, prospective student, current student, whatever, to reach out to me because I love talking about this stuff. I could talk about it forever. And there are so many different ways to be involved. There's so many different like levels of involvement. Sometimes one is like too overwhelming for some people and they don't really want to be involved, but like even the minorest bit of participation is encouraged. So like, yeah, just email me or you'll see me around campus. You'll see me at every event.
Well, thank you both, and thank you for everyone who is watching. I'll let Michael get back to studying for the bar, and Laura can get back to work in her busy schedule. So thank you again, both of you, and have a great weekend and rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Ellerts. Bye.